In mid-2025, the battle for the crown in the high-end commercial photo editing niche is basically a three-way contest between Adobe Lightroom, Capture One, and DXO Photolab. Lightroom is the safe, middle-of-the-road comfort zone for the risk-averse. Vanilla ice cream, plain toast, salted crisps, and small talk about the weather. Capture One is for Sony A1 shooters who treat their camera like a toddler's weighted security blanket, forever tethered to a computer. Photolab, meanwhile, appeals to purists, convinced that real creativity requires a mix of suffering, self-denial, and the occasional set of nipple clamps. But those roles could be about to change. Yes, even the nipple clamps. After years of denying their customers access to noob-friendly easy mode tools like Lightroom's AI masks, DXO have pulled a plot twist worthy of M. Night Shyamalan. Best demosaicing, best denoising, best lens correction, and now best masking? Okay, let's get the formalities out of the way, legends. This is one of my longer, in-depth reviews. In fact, this one's even longer than usual because, excitingly, there was so much to cover in this release. Feel free to use the chapter markers below to skip to the bits that interest you the most. I won't take it personally. This much-anticipated build of Photolab 9 supplied for testing is a late-stage beta, and some features may change prior to the full release. I tested the Mac version on my M2 MacBook Pro, which has 32 gigs of RAM, but it is, of course, a Windows version 2. Photolab has good support for a wide variety of cameras and lenses, but there are some notable support gaps, and you should 100% check to see if your camera is officially listed on their website before buying this software. Finally, I'm not a member of DXO's affiliate scheme or indeed any affiliate scheme, and this video is not sponsored by anyone but my long-suffering wife. Okay, that's the housekeeping out of the way, and now, for you poor damaged bastards with the attention span of a pisshead in a kebab shop at 1 a.m, here is the TLDR. Yes, Photolab officially has AI masks, and DXO decided to skip the baby steps and proceed directly to Usain Bolt grade sprinting. It has one-click AI masks such as sky or face, freeform object selection, and AI area selection options, which are at least as competent as Lightroom's. Furthermore, it has SubMask functionality, which enables you to combine those AI masks with the excellent Photolab masks such as control points. This arguably makes it more flexible than Lightroom because Lightroom doesn't have that awesome U-point technology. In answer to some criticisms leveled at Photolab 8, you can now use those highly granular masking capabilities to localize both AI noise reduction and the lens sharpness optimization. Yes, that means you could just denoise the background by way of example. And speaking of the lens sharpness tool, it's been upgraded to version 2 and can now be dialed in precisely according to your taste. Apple ProRAW and HEIF/HEIC formats are now, miracle of miracles, fully supported. The specialized Fuji X-T3 X-Trans denoising algorithm is officially out of beta, and it's now a little bit quicker and a little bit cleaner. Asset management has finally received a bit of loving, with support for image stacking in the film strip, advanced battery naming, and a favorites option for quick access to specific folders, projects, or drives. It's a huge update, and the good news is that the new stuff doesn't feel like the half-assed early versions Adobe iterated in Lightroom, but mature tools that are ready to go to work right bloody now. Okay, those are the bullet points. Let's get into the details, starting, of course, with those shiny new AI masks. Yes, friends, Photolab now has AI masks. They are fully featured, comprehensive, and powerful. I've been testing the new masks extensively since the beta dropped across a range of photographs. But have DXO applied the same level of care and attention that they lavish on their demosaicing and denoising? No, my friends, that wasn't the sound of hell freezing over. It was DXO adding AI masks to Photolab. I'm a landscape photographer, so I'm going to show you the first of the AI masks, which is a sky mask. Before I do that, I would just like to say that I'm using a pre-release beta version of the software here, and on the Mac version, there was an issue with the specialized subject-based selections where it simply wasn't working unless you disabled the neural engine and the GPU. So I'm running this straight off the CPU. It's still pretty quick, but do bear that in mind as we do this demonstration. So, as always, the masks are over in the local adjustments tab up at the top of the screen here. And this is the new AI mask icon, the little sort of face person icon there. So let's make a sky mask and we'll see how it does. I'm going to click the new mask button. Got my AI mask selected there. And I'm going to come down to the bottom of the screen. And here are the kind of subject-based masks. So as you can see, we've got sky, subject, background. We've got people, animals, flowers, and vehicles. And then hair, faces, and clothes. And I'll showcase a few of those. But let's kick off, like I said, with the sky mask. I'm going to hit the button and we'll see how it does. So it's done a pretty good job of these buildings around here. I can see from the tint on Tower Bridge that it selected a bit of that. Done a great job over here on the Shard. There's a gap here between the cables, but it's nothing too outrageous. Very easily fixed up with the new submasking functionality that is built into Photolab. In this first release of the AI masks in Photolab, the people masking is not as sophisticated as that which you'll find in Capture One or Adobe Lightroom. It's not as granular. You've got hair, faces, and clothes that you can select, whereas in something like Capture One, there's like 12 different segments you can select, and I think there's about 8 in Photoshop. So it's not as granular. I've also been running some tests between the 3 apps, and in fact, I'm going to show you how this particular photo looks across all 3 with an AI hair mask. I've run the AI mask here in Photolab, and you can see it says brush up there. I've done this on all 3 of the apps. I'm going to show you all 3 because I didn't want to include these people on the sides here. So I used the brush tool to erase this guy's hair and this lady's hair. And I did that with Capture One and Lightroom as well. So let's show you how it looks. That's what the overlay looks like. And it's done an okay job. You can see a few little bits it's missed out, that strand of hair down the center there. But on the whole, that's done a really nice job. If we turn up the exposure on this, we can get a better idea of what's going on. And we can see that actually it's selected some of the clothing behind the lady's hair. It's slightly opaque. It hasn't selected it fully, but nevertheless, it has selected it. And this is a common theme of AI hair masking in all of the apps. But that's a pretty good job. I think you'll agree. And we can see what it looks like if we just apply some normal adjustment. Let's say we want to just change her hair. We can see it's done a really nice job. It's kind of a bit of tint on the lady's shirt, but you could fix that up with a hue mask exclusion. I'm now going to show you the same thing in Capture One and in Lightroom. So here's Capture One. I did the same thing, just hair mask and then turn the exposure up to full so we can see how it looks. If I just press M key to turn on the masks here in Capture One, we can see what it's selected. It's done a pretty good job to come up some of these flyaway hairs down here. As with the as Photolab, it has not selected the hair in the middle here, hasn't selected these hairs on the right-hand side, but it's done a pretty good job. And if we crank the exposure up, we can see that, in fact, it's not done as good a job as Photolab. These hairs down here aren't getting picked up so much. And also notice how much of the shirt underneath is getting lit up. A slightly stronger mask in that region, but pretty even pegging. I think you'd call that a draw, wouldn't you? And then we go to Lightroom, and I think this was the worst of the three, and I'll show you why. So let me just turn the mask overlay on, and you can see from the overlay what the problem is. It's selecting everything in the hair, including everything that's underneath it. And this is a common motif I've found in all of Adobe Lightroom's AI masks. It's crap at seeing the subject behind stuff, like through the branches of a tree. So let's turn the overlay off, and I'll turn the exposure up, and you can see that it's done the worst job of the three. Done an okay job over on the left here, but it's selected all of her shirt rather than just the hair. Flipping back to Photolab, I think it's done a pretty good job, all things considered. It's done as well as Capture One, probably slightly better in some ways, and it's done a much better job than Lightroom. In addition to those subject-based masks, we've also got another couple of options with object and area selection. And the way those works is you just click on the object or area, and you can either click on individual objects or you can drag to define an area of a group of objects you want to select. So here I've got the standard object mask selected, and if I move around the screen, you can see how this works. We've seen this functionality in a couple of apps that use the AI masking. So if I just wanted to select the shard skyscraper there in the background, for instance, I can just hover over that, click the button, and that is then selected. Let's delete that one. And this time, let's do an area selection. So I'm going to click on that one. And let's say I wanted to just select the skyline. I can drag down from top left to bottom right. Let go of the mouse. And there'll be a bit of computation in the background. And as you can see, it's done a pretty good job of selecting just the buildings. I probably shouldn't have been surprised to discover just how fully formed Photolab 9's AI masks were, but I was still pleasantly surprised. Compared to Lightroom, Photolab offers fewer slider adjustments when working with those masks, and it would be nice to have the tone curve and color mixer included in a future update. As I mentioned in those demos, AI masking is not the one-click solution to localized photo editing that is often marketed as, and I think that DXO's simultaneous introduction of its submasking functionality is evidence that they agree with me. So let's take a closer look at this submask tool and how you can use it to finesse any mask. In this instance, what I've done is effectively created a kind of pseudo depth mask here. Started off with a simple graduated fill. I just dragged that from the bottom to the top of the screen there. And as you can see, portions of the sky are included in that graduated filter. And then what I did was I made an AI sky mask and then removed it by using the invert shape. So it deleted all of the sky from the graduated filter. So now we have a beautiful graduated effect to be applied across the image with a perfect cutoff point on this tree line here before it goes up into the sky. And then I can crank up the contrast just on this. And because it's a graduated filter, the effect of that contrast is obviously strongest at the bottom and then lessens across the image as we go up to the top. So that's one neat way of using the submasks. Let's look at another example now. So in this instance, what I thought to myself was, what if I wanted to just select the middle portion of this woman's jacket just to colorize it? And I got quite a densely nested list of masks here. It started off quite simply with a AI mask on the clothing, which you can see here. And then I used the area selection tool to drag down across each sleeve to remove them. The AI mask for the clothes did pick up quite a few bits of the image that I didn't want in there. So for instance, you can see there's a portion to the right of her head, her left hand there, her right hand in the bottom left of the picture there is selected too. And there's a portion of grass to the right of her arm as well that needed to be removed. But that's simple fixes. We can just use the brush tool to brush them out. And then you end up with a nice clean selection, which you can colorize in any way that you want. So as you can see, DXO have addressed two of the long-standing issues with Photolab, that lack of AI masking and that old school masking workflow. In effect, the mask and submask functionality works like a layer group in Photoshop. That means you can create incredibly sophisticated masking profiles for highly specific parts of a photograph. As impressive as Photolab 9's AI masking and submasking are, DXO's real ace is something no rival editor offers: localized AI denoise and lens sharpness corrections. DXO's iteration of its prime denoising algorithms are fairly legendary in photographic circles, offering the perfect blend of noise removal and detail retention in an image. But now they've upped the ante by enabling you to apply that denoise and lens sharpness correction using any of the masking tools, AI or otherwise, to perfectly tune the levels of noise and detail in your image. Here's how it works. Up until now, the problem with AI denoising, all AI denoising, no matter which app we're talking about, is that it's a one and done deal. You apply it globally across the image, and you have to rely on the capabilities of the algorithm to discern the differences between noise and detail and preserve the former and not the latter. However, in DXO Photolab 9, we now have targeted AI denoising and targeted lens correction. Now, because this is AI denoising, it only works in this app on RAW files. And the caveat, of course, is that you have to have applied it globally first. So you go into the denoising section for the image. I'm editing a Fujifilm X-T4 RAW file here. So I have got the Deep Prime X-T3 X-Trans denoising model selected. Once you've done that, you can then go into the masking and you can apply differing levels of denoising and lens correction according to whatever outcome you want. So in the case of this photo, for instance, I want the background denoise because, as you can see, it's pixely as hell. If we zoom in a bit on this, you can see just how much noise there is. However, whilst there is a little bit of noise in the bird, the problem with any denoising algorithm is that it's going to take away some of the detail in this bird's feathers and its plumage, its feet, its eyes, and its beak, and all the rest of it. This is a perfect candidate for applying differing levels of noise. So I've masked this already. We've got a background mask here. I used the AI area mask to create a background mask, just dragged across from the top left to the bottom right, and then filled in a couple of areas, which was the umbrella that the bird's standing on. And then we've got the animal mask, and this is just literally the AI mask for the bird and then its feet. So it did a pretty sensational job on masking the bird, I have to say, straight off the bat. And so what I want to do now is change the noise level on the background. So if we scroll down the panel, you can see we've got this new section here, denoising and demosaicing. Yes, we're still in local adjustments. And so because I've got the background selected, I'm going to have a nice high level of denoising. I've got the luminance slider here set to 75. I'm not forcing the details because there isn't any detail in there. It was shot a nice bokeh. It's nice out of focus background. And that's the way we like it. I can also turn down the lens sharpness optimization. There's no need for it. We do not need to sharpen anything in the background there. In fact, we can turn that off completely and we'll get a better outcome. And for the bird, we want to turn down the denoising. So it's currently set to 40. I think we'll bring that down a little bit further. Let's say around 26, something like that, 30. That's looking okay. We'll have a look. We'll zoom in a second and use the loop tool to analyze this. I've got the lens sharpness optimization at the default, which is the halfway point. And I'm not using the force detail slider at all. So we're doing a little bit of denoising on the subject, but not much. Let us zoom into 200%. scroll up the picture and let's have a look in the loop what the results look like. So the loop tool, of course, gives us a preview of what an output image will be at high quality. And as you can see, we've retained all the beautiful detail in the feathers, but we've completely annihilated that horrible pattern of noise in the background. There's still a little bit of grain in there, but you want that. That's the DNA of the photograph. If I turn this loop on and off, we can see what an amazing job it's doing. There's before, and there's after. It's done a really nice light denoise on the bird and a full denoise on the background. I'll output this at full resolution, and I can now show you what the finished image looks like, the whole thing. And I think we can all agree, even on the highly compressed YouTube screen, that this is absolutely stunning. Being able to create perfectly targeted zones of a photograph and apply precise levels of noise and lens sharpening to those zones is a powerful addition to any photographer's toolbox. You cannot do anything close to this in Adobe Lightroom, either version, and Capture One doesn't even have a 21st century denoise tool at all. So DXO have definitely taken the high ground with this one, and poor old Anakin stands no chance whatsoever.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
For the longest time, one of the biggest complaints leveled at Photolab was that it couldn't process iPhone RAW files. This always seemed like a bizarre omission in the app's otherwise excellent camera and lens support library, considering the iPhone is the most popular camera in the world. But the good news is that the wait is over, and Photolab 9 now includes support for Apple ProRAW and the pseudo-RAW HEIF/HEIC formats. Yes, friends, you can now edit iPhone RAW or HEIC/HEIF files in Photolab. So here's an image I took on my iPhone 14. You can see the metadata over on the left here, shot with the triple back camera at full resolution 8064 by 6048. So the first caveat is no AI denoising. You can just use the standard old school luminance chrominance denoising, but pretty much everything else is open to use. If I wanted to fix up this one, I think that masking would be the way to go. So let's come in here quickly and make an AI sky mask. See if we can bring out some of the details and color in that sky that I can see it just lurking there. As you can see, it's done a sensational job of that sky mask. Let's bring the exposure down slightly on that. Actually, before I do that, let's change the color profile and stick it on vibrant. Yeah, that's much nicer. Let's go back to that mask. Bring that exposure down. Let's use a bit of Clear View Plus to make those clouds come out. I don't go too crazy. We want it looking natural. Where should we settle? Somewhere around there. That's looking really nice. And then let's add a bit of contrast, shall we, to the foreground. So I'm going to make a new mask. Going to select the AI mask. Going to use the area tool. And I'm just going to drag from top left to bottom right to select all of that. Could have made a sky mask and inverted it, but I didn't. I used the area mask instead. So then we can bring up the micro contrast a little bit. Maybe drop the black slightly to get some contrast in there. In fact, looking at that sky, let's just drop the highlights down very slightly on that. Bring that right-hand side out. And also, let's bring up the saturation very slightly. Actually, do vibrance. There we go. So here's another iPhone RAW that I edited. This one was taken on the 16 Pro Max and is at 4032 by 3024 millimeters. Here's how the original RAW file, with a little bit of light editing, this is what I came up with. I just created a couple of masks, one for the animals and the guy on the horse, and one for the background. And I simply bumped the contrast slightly on the horses just to make the beautiful animals make their sort of veins and stuff pop a little bit more. So that's before, that's after. And then I lowered the exposure slightly on the background and bumped the exposure very slightly on the foreground, just to de-emphasize the background and emphasize the foreground. It's a shame there's no AI noise reduction possible with iPhone photographs, but the computational engine in iPhones is powerful and it's less of an issue than with regular cameras. Let's talk organizational tools now. And the good news on that front is that DxO have finally given the asset management side of Photolab a little bit of attention. Don't get your hopes up. It's not an overhaul, but they have at least added a few welcome features that will make maintaining a photo archive with Photolab a little bit easier. Been a couple of welcome additions to the asset management side of things in Photolab, and I hope this is a sign of things to come and that DxO iterate many more changes, because the asset management side of Photolab is quite weak. One of the new features that has been added is stacking. For those of you who aren't familiar with this, it just enables you to group similar photos together in little bundles inside the organizational window. Very useful if, like me, you shoot lots of bracketed images. And I want to group those 3 photos together because I'm going to process them using tone mapping. So to access the new stacking functionality here in Photolab, you can just go to the image menu or right click, go to stacking and stack by shot date. I've got the time interval set to 2 seconds, which is exactly the same as I use in Lightroom. And I'm going to tick the stack button here. And as you can see, it's done a good job of grouping these stacked images together. So here's a bundle of 3 images. Just click on the little number 3 to open the stack up. And then you can send that off to, your HDR tool or whatever you use to combine your stacked images. The second feature that DxO have added is a batch rename tool. To access that, just go to image and then rename selected image. And you can just create whatever kind of name format you want. So you want to have the ISO in your file name or the lens you use. You can construct whatever elaborate file name floats your boat. Click the rename button and it will then change all those file names for you. And the last new feature to asset management in this version of Photolab is a new favorites window. So I put all my test shots in the favorites here. So I've got some of the images you might have seen me testing in this video. Easy to access. You can add any directory or folder you want to the favorites. Well, I, of course, welcome these new tweaks to asset management in Photolab. I was still disappointed to discover that they haven't enabled any sub-folder functionality yet. If you have a parent folder with some nested folders inside it, you will only see the photos in the root folder, not in those subfolders. I have no idea why DxO refused to enable this very basic feature. I can't imagine it's a huge tweak to make, and it would greatly improve the usability of the file manager. Along with their world-leading AI denoising, DxO also introduced an AI-based lens optimization tool in version 8, released this time last year. I loved the way this tool worked in tandem with the denoising to retain image detail during that denoising process, but there was some criticism from users that on certain camera RAW formats, it was too heavy-handed. The lens sharpness optimization has been upgraded to version 2 in Photolab 9, and I kind of concurred with the general consensus when it came to the previous iterations of that tool, was that it was sometimes a little bit heavy-handed and it was quite hard to dial in a sufficient level of sharpness. I've been testing this a little bit, and I noticed from the release notes that DxO supplied to us that they said that the calibration process and sharpening algorithm were reworked from the ground up to ensure homogeneous results across all camera gear and shooting conditions. And then it says in brackets, feature will roll out progressively, which I take to mean that it's not your full RAW support. I opened a Canon RAW file I took on my 72, I think it was. Yep, that's right. And I've got Deep Prime 3 enabled on this image and the new lens sharpness optimization. And I'm just going to fire up the old loop so we can preview how that lens sharpness looks. Here's at 100%, which is the mid-range, which they in their notes say is just the right amount of sharpening. And have to say, I really like the way it looks at that default setting. Let me disable this to show you what it looks without it. Watch the inner section there where the loop is. So there's no sharpening. If we enable that again, we can see we've got this beautiful crisp here. Just so you can see for a point of reference, I'll turn that intensity slider to the maximum. There you go. That's at full strength. Turn it off completely. Off and on. And in my testing with these Canon RAW files, I do think that they have done a better job on this. I've got this same photograph open, so you've got a point of reference in Photolab 8. So I'm going to click to that now. And this is at full strength. Let's go back to 9 briefly, sorry, and we'll turn the strength up to 4 on that one. So there's full strength. You probably wouldn't ever apply that much sharpening. But if we go back to 8, you can see it's much crunchier, isn't it? Way harsher at full strength. So it seems like they've kind of toned the algorithm down, and you can dial in exactly the right amount of sharpness that you want that best suits the photograph that you are processing. The AI denoising in DXO's apps, Photolab and PureRAW, is of course well known and widely considered to be the best on the market. They recently addressed the long-standing issue of Fuji RAW denoising with a brand new algorithm called XT3 X-Trans, which was released in beta version in the previous release of Photolab. And in this release, we get the full production release of that algorithm. Not going into a huge amount of depth on denoising in this review because I covered it in a great deal of depth in my 8.5 review, which I will link to up there. Go and check that out if you want the full skinny on how these AI denoising algorithms work. However, in Photolab 9, DXO have taken the XT3 X-Trans method out of beta. We've got the full production version, and that's what I'm going to show you here. Got a couple of example photographs from the images that I tested with side by side in Lightroom purely for display purposes. So we have DXO on the left, Lightroom on the right. Let's do the look at the cowboys' faces, and I'd like you to check out this cowboy's face here. Look how much more detail is in there, how much better it's lit. It's an all-round better result. We've also got much nicer resolution on this guy's t-shirt, which I think is thanks to the combination of the denoising and the lens sharpness optimization. If we have a little look at the siding here, see how it's doing with material. Again, nicely cleaned up with DXO. Still heaps of high ISO noise in the Lightroom version. In the background, we can see that Lightroom's let some hot pixels go through, but they've both done a nice job on the foliage. Incidentally, these were both output at the middle setting, which was the best compromise I could come up with for retaining detail in Lightroom and still having some strong denoising in there. And here's another high ISO image, which I've tested them on, another XT4 file. Again, we have DXO on the left, Lightroom 14.5 on the right. Let's zoom in on these houses, and we can see that Photolab's done a superb job of removing the noise from the buildings whilst retaining all that detail. It's just gobsmacking, actually, how much better that is than the Lightroom version, which has got huge amounts of noise still in the front here on the cliffs. We've come over to this portion here, got little heaps of high ISO noise. DXO's rendered these cars better. If we zoom out and check out the headland, look how much better that's resolved with the headland, the detail, the noise. just an all-round better job. Prior to sending this beta version of Photolab 9 out to the media, DXO invited us all along to a launch on Zoom and were kind enough to give us the opportunity to put some questions directly to Fabrizio and Nicolas, DXO's product director and chief product evangelist, respectively. And it was immediately evident from the questions being put to the developers by the attending media that the brand new AI masking tools in Photolab were the star of the show. It would seem that DXO's tactic of playing a waiting game has paid dividends because AI masking feels like a mature implementation, not its first iteration. Rather than simply including a couple of AI masking solutions, DXO opted for 3: subject-based, object-based, and area-based. It's not flawless, but the failures aren't unique to DXO. Lightroom stumbles in exactly the same places, like missing the sky behind tree branches, and that suggests the limitation lies with the AI itself, not with the implementation. But as great as it is to see DXO going toe-to-toe with Adobe, I strongly believe that rather than the AI masks, it's the SubMasks and the local noise and lens sharpness tools that are the real standout features of this release. Photolab's new layer and group style workflow is a huge step forward and frankly long overdue, given how primitive its earlier design was. I'm pleased that DXO have answered their critics and added AI masks to the app. I think their viewpoint masking is one of the most misunderstood and underrated tools in any photo editor on the market, so it's amazing that we can now combine those viewpoint masks with AI masks and old-school linear, radial, and brush masks in 1,000 different ways. The Localised AI denoise and sharpening tool is one of those features that instantly makes the old methods look quaint by comparison. I'm sure there are plenty of instances where a globally applied AI denoise is a sensible idea, but equally, there are many more where it's not, and I think it's wildlife and portrait photographers, for instance, who are going to fall in love with this feature immediately. The changes to asset management are welcome, a small step in the right direction, but so much more could be done. I love the stacking tool, but I think the batch rename is a bit of a head scratcher. I can think of 10 features I'd have chosen to include long before that. In terms of denoising, DXO have continued to maintain a healthy gap between themselves and Adobe, and there wasn't a single instance in my testing where I felt like Lightroom had the edge. It's a particularly good time to be a Fuji photographer. The addition of support for iPhone RAW files is long overdue. The iPhone camera is the one that most of us have with us at all times, and being able to get the very best from its RAW photos is awesome. The revamped Lens Sharpness version 2 tool highlights DXO's responsiveness to some criticisms, delivering a version that's both more effective and easier to control than before. With this latest version of Photolab, DXO cemented their position at the very top of the raw photo editing niche with a massive update to their flagship app. That said, I'd like to see their willingness to listen to their customers reflected in changes to their licensing system as well. Photolab is an app that you can purchase with a lifetime license, and yet, if it's unable to phone home to DXO servers after 37 days, you get locked out of the app. I understand that this is an anti-piracy measure, but being locked out of your photo editor because you're offline for a bit over a month sounds like something Adobe would do. It would also be nice to see DXO implement a better activation and deactivation process, one that works through a simple online user interface. Many customers, mainly Windows users, have reported ongoing issues with managing activations, and it's alienating people who otherwise love this software. There's been a request to fix this on the official DXO forums for over 5 years now, and it would be great to see DXO finally put this issue to bed. All things considered, though, there has never been a more compelling reason to switch from one of the other commercial RAW editors, such as Lightroom or Capture One, over to DXO Photolab, assuming, of course, that you don't need tethering. Minor issues aside, it is, as far as I'm concerned, the best commercial RAW editor on the market. The demosaicing engine has always been the best. Ditto the AI denoising, and now it has a masking system that's more flexible than the competition's and in many ways much more capable. Photolab 9 is remarkably good at the tedious business of making photographs look better, which coincidentally is what photo editing software is supposed to do. Revolutionary concept, isn't it? While other companies focus on extracting maximum revenue per pixel, DXO seems committed to the quaint notion of actually improving their product from the raw sensor data up. It's not just an upgrade, it's a French middle finger to overpriced mediocrity. And that will do us for this very in-depth review of DXO Photolab 9. Are you an existing user of Photolab, or are you interested in switching from one of the other flagship apps? Will those new AI masks tempt you to switch teams? Do let me know in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, do please give it a like. If you got value from it, consider subscribing to my channel for more photo, video, and drone-related content from me. Till the next time, guys. Ta-ta.